One of the most interesting things that I took away from this trip was getting to see the different perspectives of everyone who went with me. I got to get a different perspective about everyone. I saw the tourist version of Elijah, always carrying a camera around his neck. I got to experience the roommate version of Charisma. I got to see the sister version of Lily. And just in general, traveling around the world can really help change how you see people. I feel like I've seen a part of these 9 people that not many people have gotten to see. I feel incredibly fortunate to have experienced this trip with such an amazing group of people that I didn't even know could be so great. For the next 3 years at Gould, I know that I will look at them differently. When I see Elijah playing a lacrosse game, I'm going to remember what it was like to annoy him in the back of the bus driving through Ecuadorian streets. When I see videos of Aiden skiing, I'll think of us buying those fake Nikes in downtown Otavalo. When I see Charisma laughing with the boys' varsity basketball players at lunch, I'll remember that night we stayed up until 12 playing card games. If I ever end up texting Frank, Eric, Coco, or Kaya goodnight, I'll remember it since you warned me how everyone used to say goodnight to everyone at least twice, just to annoy everyone else. When I see Russell in his all-white snowboarding gear, I'll remember when we were on a hammock with Aiden and broke it. Oops. When I see Lily in class, I'll remember when we were confused at our homestays because we didn't know what was going on. I remember feeling lucky then, feeling so lucky I got to experience that confusion with her. So, I guess that's all I need to say. I feel lucky.
I learned a lot more than I expected in the beginning in Ecuador. While I was staying with my host family, it was the first time that I feel at home and taken care by someone else. Though I didn't know any Spanish and I can't even communicate fluently with the host mother, I helped her with every meal. Whenever I had a problem, she helped me without thinking twice. In the community called Warmi, we worked together and realized how hard they worked every day. And it made me reflect about myself and reflect a lot about my school life in Gould. When I was in a place called Otavalo, the high altitude sickness bothered me a lot. First, I had a headache and was sleepy all day. However, the group encouraged me that I have to overcome it. I tried to walk and hike. Finally, I wasn't afraid of illness anymore. When I was on a plane that went back to America, I realized that I changed a lot. I became more confident in speaking English as a foreign English learner. I became braver by traveling in the real forest and doing heavy work every day. And I became a person that would prefer teamwork with others. The experience this group in Ecuador is memorable and precious.
The Ecuador experience is probably the best travel experience I had ever had. Elisha and I shared the same homestay and we were so lucky because the homestay host knew English, so we could talk a lot. The best part to me was definitely the last night. We bought gifts to the kids in our homestay. When they opened the backpack, they were so happy to see all the new stuff. I was touched because I saw happiness in their eyes. In that moment, I suddenly realized that everything we did was worth it. We helped to build an English learning center. We came to Ecuador not just for traveling. We were there to experience a different culture, to see what difference when people live in another kind of world. It was such a great time. And to my family, my father did not have much concern for my safety. First of all, we went there with teachers and took a medicine on time. And he thought there's no need to worry about me because I need to experience this life, and this is good for me. But for my mom, that is a different story. Her concern made me feel unhappy because I know I need to have this experience to grow, and seems she did not trust me. Finally, I convinced her, and now she knows that I can travel without her. I know how hard being a mom is to care about your kids every single moment. We emphasize with each other.
My parents would find it amazing, all the once-in-a-lifetime experiences that I had in Ecuador. One day, we sat down and ate grubs for lunch, and that was extremely disgusting, but still tasted pretty good. I met some really nice people while I was doing my homestay at Army for a couple of days. Eric and I had a homestay together, and our family didn't speak any English, so it was a little harder to bond with them like everyone else did. But we still had a lot of laughs with with them, and some really fun times, like when Eric fell through the stairs walking down from where we stayed at night. I had only done very small trips with my parents before, like to Florida, but I'd traveled all across the U.S. and to Canada with Gould's freestyle team. This was a lot different for me. Staying in a tight group, all wearing the same shirt, and usually we're all over the place on freestyle trips. But it was a lot of fun still, with lots of new experiences and different things.
Hi, I'm Eric Lee. I got a lot of bug bites from Ecuador, and I learned a lot of Spanish too. I think my parents will never believe that I ate a huge bug. I don't remember what that bug is called, but it was still very disgusting. My host family was a very important part of this trip, but it wasn't scary for me. When I was in 8th grade, I came to America alone and lived with a host family, so I already get used on it. I saw some students get homesick during this trip, and it was just like me when I was in 8th grade. Although it was a lot of different, I feel very, very lonely. But in Ecuador host family, I got a host partner, Aiden. We can hang out together even though we can't communicate with our host family. I got a funny story to tell. There was one night Aiden and I planned to go have dinner with our host family. He walked down the stairs first, and then I went right after him. But when I stepped on it, my foot went right through. I was so scared at that time. I was worried that my host family would not be happy about this. The next day, when I told them, she looked at me and smiled. When I got back to our host family, and the stairs got fixed.
Neither of my parents have been out of the country before. My mom came to America when she was 7 years old and hasn't left since. While she was in Puerto Rico, she was in the hospital for most of her time there. And she was a very sick kid, and she was allergic to mosquitoes, and the doctors told my grandparents that in order for her to stay alive, she had to move to Boston. And so they did, and she wasn't really able to appreciate the beauty of her home in Puerto Rico, and I think that the beauty of Ecuador would be something she'd find amazing, and I think my parents would be surprised by the natural beauty of Ecuador.
In Ecuador, I learned to understand a lot. I learned that family is the most important thing in the whole world. What gave me this understanding was my homestay. My host family had 14 people, or 12 kids. This was the hardest thing for me to understand. My family back in Bethel is just a family of 5, but our house is twice the size. This family of 14 lived in a home that was just 3 rooms, a common room, and 2 bedrooms. The kitchen was off to the side of the house, but it was outside. This didn't matter to these people. Having such a small home made it so the family could not hide from each other. This made it so the kids were never fighting. The house was so quiet at night that I couldn't even believe that there were 3 small children in the house with us. All of them sat on a mattress that served as their couch at night and watched TV. Most of them learned their mother's trade of making bracelets. By the end of our 2-night homestay, I felt like a part of the family. On our last night, we had to say our gratitudes to our family, which ended up being the beginning of our goodbyes. Almost everyone that night was brought to tears, wishing they could stay for at least one more night. I listened to what the other groups had to say about their homestays, and there wasn't a single person that said what most of the Ecuador students had to say about the homestay. Most of us said that our homestays was the major changing point in our trip. I hope to see this love for Ecuadorian homestays continue into the following years, as I think this is truly what made the Ecuador trip special.
In Ecuador, I had a lot of life-changing experiences. The biggest one I encountered was staying with a host. This changed my view on a lot of things, such as happiness, wealth, developed world problems, and gratefulness. My host family was incredibly happy. They were happier than a lot of families I know in America, yet they have barely half the materials than the not-so-happy families here. What I'm really trying to get at is that happiness doesn't always depend on how much money you have or how much more you have compared to others. Happiness is what you make it. My homestay family's happiness seemed to be made by having each other around. I think that after this trip, I changed a lot, and it made me feel incredibly grateful for everything I have. When I shared my experience with my family, my parents had similar takes on it. My parents both were pretty amazed with what we had done. My father traveled around the world quite a bit when he was younger, but I don't think he did what we did at Sinchiwarmi and at La Libertad. I'm sure they would both absolutely love doing this. After talking to them about it, I realized how privileged I am, a little more than how I used to look at it. Traveling without my parents wasn't anything crazy because I have done it quite a few times. A few times to Vancouver and sometimes to Florida, Utah, and more. And I very rarely travel with my whole family anymore, so being with all of these amazing friends on the trip made me feel as if I had a family here. All the amazing Ecuadorian people we interacted with really made me feel welcome and as if I could do anything I would to do at home and feel completely comfortable with it.
Look, Coco, tarantula! Oh, I'm scared! That was a daily trick that the local kids made on me. They called my name with a cute accent and pointed on my back and said there was a tarantula on my body. Actually, it's a kind of huge spider in the forest. And that's how I learned my first Quechua word in Ecuador. Honestly, the happiest thing during this trip was making friends with the local kids there. They must be the most innocent and adorable kids I have ever met before. I still remembered when I first arrived at their community. They stared at us with their big and curious eyes. They were shy at first, but after I took out my candies for them, suddenly they all came over excitedly. Everyone got a very satisfied smile on their faces after eating the candies. Then they gave me a fist bump just like good buddies. I really had a good time with the kids there. We played soccer, went fishing, and went swimming together. I will miss them all, and hope to go back to the community and see them one day.